people think awakening begins with joy or peace, but mine didn't. Mine started with losing stability, questioning everything, and feeling like my whole life was falling apart. And that's the part nobody tells you. Real transformation doesn't usually begin with bliss. It begins with disruption. It begins with loss. It begins with the moment your old life stops working and you realize you can't go back to who you were. That's what I want to talk about today. The process of awakening, the ascent, or what I call the Aliyah, and why so many people get stuck in the middle of it. For me, this started back in 2015. My husband lost his job, and at that time, he was the only income as I was a stay-at-home mom. Savings goes fast, and before you know it, you're staring at bills wondering how rent and lights are going to get paid. And I remember sitting here thinking, this doesn't make sense. Because at that point, I thought I had a good relationship with God. I thought I had already gone through the hard parts of my life. Like, I had already paid my dues. We had already been through tough times. But then everything fell apart anyway. For about 9 months, we were just trying to survive. I became a power seller on eBay just to keep the bills paid. And if you've ever sold on eBay, you know that there's no certainty, no stability. And all I had was faith. Not the kind of faith that feels peaceful. The kind where you don't have another option. Up until that point, the hard times we had gone through allowed me to exercise my faith. So at least I had that strong faith. And looking back now, that season wasn't punishment. That was the beginning of my awakening. But here's the part no one explains. When this process starts, it doesn't feel like clarity. It feels like loss. There's a process we all should be walking through. I call it the Aliyah or the ascent. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in phases. And if you don't understand the phases, you could get stuck in a loop. A lot of people get stuck at phase 1 and never move past it their entire life. For me, this has been about a 10-year process. And when I look back at that season in 2015, and then coming into 2016, when we finally started getting back on our feet, I began to understand why it happened. Because before all of that, I had built an identity around things that didn't actually matter. I felt like I had to keep up a certain image. I needed the nice bags, the nice shoes. I was spending money on things I didn't really need, and at the same time complaining that we didn't have enough. And I remember during that season of 2015, when we had no stable income, not knowing how the bills were going to be paid from week to week, I would have these thoughts of all those handbags sitting out on the curb while we had nowhere to live. And something in me shifted, because the things I once thought I loved, I couldn't look at the same way anymore. I didn't lose my appreciation for nice things, but I lost the attachment. I didn't need them to feel okay anymore. And looking back, I could see that I had just come through a season of refinement. God had really showed up in my life and taught me a really important lesson, a hard lesson, but He also was with me every step of the way through it. Going through that fire changed me. And for the first time, God felt real to me in a way that wasn't based on what I had been told, but on what I had actually lived. Because up until that point, I loved God, but it was through religion, through what other people said God was, through confusion. But after that season, there was clarity and a deeper faith. So now that I felt stronger and felt like I had better communication with God, I said, I want to know the truth, no matter what. Not what religion tells me, not what everyone else thinks. I want the absolute truth. And I didn't realize at the time that that decision was going to take me down before it ever brought me up. It's what Spirit calls alchemy, which is the transformative process that turns something ordinary into something extraordinary. I had to go into the depths of myself to understand why I think the way I think, why I react the way I react, why I believed the things I believed. And it felt like going through the fire again. It's not waking up one day and saying, oh, I know everything now. I've transformed. That's not how it works. It's not just meditating for 2 hours a day. It's not just knowing about hidden systems, shadow governments, or who rules the world. Knowledge alone is not awakening. True awakening is what that knowledge does inside of you, and whether it changes how you live. And this is where I see a lot of confusion right now. There are so many messages out there that say, here's how to raise your vibration instantly, or live off grid to beat the system. And yes, certain things can shift how you feel in a moment, and being less reliant on the system is great. But to truly rise higher, you don't just add more information, more spiritual language, or more external preparation. You have to be stripped. The stripping process. And that's what I went through for 10 years, from 2015 until 2025. Letting go of things I didn't want to let go of. Facing parts of myself I didn't want to face. Leaving people I didn't want to leave. Walking away from beliefs I had held on to my entire life. And a lot of it was scary, because when you start changing like that, people don't always understand. They judge you, they question you, they think you've fallen off or gone the wrong way. You might even hear, you're going to hell. And then, after 10 years, after all of that work, I reached a point last year where I thought, I've finally arrived. Like the stripping was over. Like I had made it through. But what I saw was like I had been climbing through this narrow tunnel, finally reaching the top floor, pushing my head out, looking around, and realizing I was just at the beginning of the top floor, the beginning of the next level. The rebuilding phase. Everything I had gone through was just getting me out of the depths, laying every piece of me to the side to see what was true and what was a lie. And now I'm in a completely different phase. not being stripped anymore, but being rebuilt into what I was actually created to be. Not what I was programmed to believe, not what I was told I had to be, but what's true. And this is what I want you to understand, because this might be where you are right now. There are phases to this. There's phase 1, the disruption. When something hits your life and changes everything, maybe a job loss, a divorce, health issues, a moment where the life you thought you were living exposes itself and you were completely deceived. Something happens to stop you and make you question everything. Phase 2, the collapse. This is where the grief comes in. You start to see things differently, and it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like confusion. You realize things you trusted weren't what you thought. People, beliefs, even versions of yourself. For me, this was around 2018 into 2019. And I remember sitting in my room and just crying for weeks, maybe even months, because something in me knew things were shifting. I knew the world was changing. I couldn't fully explain it at the time. I just felt it. And there wasn't really anyone to talk to about it, so I just kept it to myself. And this is important because what I was feeling back then, a lot more people are feeling now. After everything that's happened in the world over the last few years, people are starting to question things. They're seeing more, they're waking up. But here's the problem. They don't know what to do with what they're seeing. So instead of moving forward, they get stuck in confusion, in fear, in that spiral of, what do we do now? And that's where the collapse can turn into a loop. But what feels like everything breaking down is actually the beginning of you seeing clearly. Phase 3, the in-between. You don't fit in your old life anymore, but you don't feel stable in the new one either. Maybe old friends don't connect anymore. Maybe even siblings. Or your spouse is looking at you like, what happened to you? You feel unsettled, disconnected, like you're standing in a doorway between two rooms and you can't go back, but forward doesn't feel solid either. And this is where a lot of people stop because it's uncomfortable. But this is also where the work is. Because everything that's coming up in this phase is showing you what needs to be cleared, not to punish you, but to free you. What I started to understand while walking through this is that every situation is a test, not to pass or fail, but to reveal something in you. And you'll notice you either move through it or you keep seeing the same pattern repeat over and over again until it's cleared. If you're not clearing, you're not moving. And if you're not moving, you're repeating. And here's something else I've learned. If you're in a human body, there's always something to be cleared. Just the other day, I was in a situation with someone I love, and what they were going through was affecting me way more than it should have. I felt anxious, almost nauseous, and I had to stop and ask myself, why am I feeling this when it doesn't even directly affect me? Because yes, we should care about the people we love, but we're not meant to carry their weight. And I knew that, but my body was still carrying it. So I asked why, And that night, I had a dream that showed me exactly where it was coming from. It went all the way back to something in my childhood where I didn't feel supported. And once I saw that, I was able to clear it. And now I can be there for that person without it affecting my health or taking me out of alignment. And this is what I want you to understand. This isn't a one-time thing. This is a process. There are layers to everything. Some are surface level and some go deep. I've worked through the same types of patterns over and over again through the years, each time going a little deeper until they were fully cleared. And here's how you know. If something from your past comes up and you still feel it, whether that's sadness, anger, heaviness, there's still something there to be cleared. Because as you clear one layer, it unlocks the next. And that's how you move forward. And here's the bigger picture. This isn't just happening on an individual level. We're living in a time where everything is being revealed. Truth, lies, patterns, systems, it's all coming to the surface. Some people are waking up, and some people are going right back to sleep. Not because they can't see, but because they don't want to face what it requires. And this is why I do what I do. Because this process, the ascent, the Aliyah, is real. And a lot of you are already in it. You just don't realize what you're walking through. And when no one explains it, people start to believe that life is just supposed to be constant struggle. Or they think, if I'm being attacked, I must be doing something right. But that's not the goal. The goal is to rise through those levels to become whole. And what I found in my own life is this. The more I understood what was actually happening, and the more I worked through what was coming up, the more peace I experienced. I don't live in constant chaos anymore. I'm not stuck in those same cycles anymore. I feel grounded. I'm in my body in the present moment instead of in my mind stuck in the past or dreading the future. I feel clear. I feel free in a way I never did before. And when something does come up now, I know how to move through it instead of it taking me down. Because once you truly understand how this works, like Jesus the Christ said, the truth will set you free. And I can honestly say I've never been freer. And I want that for you too. Because the more of us that do this work, the more clarity, the more peace, the more light we bring into the world around us. And that is how we collectively build a new earth. It starts with us. I'm not here to save you, but I am here to show you what this looks like so you don't quit in the middle of it. Because this isn't something happening to you. It's something happening through you. You came here for this time to do this work. The kingdom is within you, which means everything you need to move forward is already there. So, if this resonates with you and you're ready to go deeper, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because we're just getting started. Until next time, namaste.